How many people do we have here? This
About
is
like
awesome. 70
70s.
people. Great. Okay, Monica, did you already brief everyone on how it goes?
Yes. So we're, I think, all ready for, I see some hands raised.
It was really nice of Sam to agree to be here, and it's been a Herculean effort. I think he had a breakdown on the way. What happened, Sam?
I was driving on the highway 2 hours ago. I was 30 minutes from my home and my car hit something and it ruined my wheel and I had to wait for a tow truck but it's all good. I'm here now.
Right on. I appreciate you being here. So yeah, guys, just put up your hands if you got a question. We'll go one by one. And Sam, how much time do you have? You have an hour, 45?
Yeah, an hour 45 or an
No, no,
hour.
no. Do you have
Yeah.
45 minutes or an
Yeah,
hour?
whatever, an hour. An hour is fine.
Okay, perfect. Okay, let's go.
Jay, I think you are the first. Go ahead.
Thanks, Monica, for hosting, first of all. And Andrew, fellow Canadian, congrats on Never Enough. Can't wait to read it.
Well, thank you.
Gentlemen, I love both your pods. They're so excellent. And my question is actually for Sam. Sam, if you were starting a newsletter from scratch today, how would you grow to your first 100K subs and how long do you think it would take you?
It took me about 1 year to get to 100K. So I started this thing called the hustle. I think in the first year we got 100, the second year 500, third year million, fourth year 1.6 or 7 or 5 or something like that. I started that in 2016. I started April 19th of 2016. The way that we started it was I blogged like crazy. So if you Google the hustle Soylent, or if you Google the hustle Kindle, you'll see all these controversial articles that I used to write, and they would go viral sometimes. I would write 10 of them, three of them would go viral, and then I would get 1 million people to the website in a month, and 30,000 of them would sign up. And then the next month, I would get only 250,000, and 5,000 people would sign up. And I did that to about 100,000 back then, which wasn't that long ago. But back then, Twitter wasn't really as popular. But I think now my strategy would work, but the tactics would be different. My strategy is to create content for the platform where the audience that you want to attract already is, and then so for me, it was like Reddit slash Soylent. It's like Slim Fast for nerds. It's like this drink that engineering nerdy guys would drink. And so there was a subreddit called reddit.com/Soylent, and it had 100,000 subscribers. So I wrote articles that I thought could get popular there, and a percentage of them would sign up. So I would do that same thing, except I don't know who you're going after, but let's say it's people on Twitter, let's say it's people on Facebook, whatever. I would create articles specifically for that group of people where they live and try to siphon them off the platform. After 100,000 people, we knew that we could monetize the list. And so I knew how much I could spend to acquire a customer. And so we started advertising on Facebook and Instagram. I think that would still work today, but I would only do it if you knew exactly how much money you could spend for a subscriber and how long it would take to be profitable. But all those strategies would probably still work the same today, although it is the pros of when I started was that there was way less competition. The con was that there was no playbook. So me and like Morning Brew and the Skim were basically inventing it as we go. The pros nowadays is there is a playbook and you could copy people who have already done it. The cons is that I do think there's more competition for attention. So it's a bit more challenging. But from what I've heard of people advertising on Facebook and who are growing newsletters, it's mostly similar, but it is different.
Sweet.
I
Who's
hope,
next?
Shaggy, I think you're next.
Yeah, Andrew, I'm excited to read your book. I feel like you have a great story, and it would be nice to have it all in one place and be able to read through it. And for my question, so I'm modeling, I guess it's for Sam. I'm modeling my business after Bootstrap Live and HustleCon.
That's
My last
funny.
event was, oh yeah, my last event was half panel discussion, half pickleball tournament. I did 3,300 in sales, but selling tickets was very hard, and it was mostly in person because that's what I was working out. And then would you recommend infographics and blog posts about my one speaker to get traffic, or how would you sell tickets today?
That is funny that you know about that. And Andrew, I'm two for two at your AMA. I'm getting two questions. So, like when I was 24 years old, when I first starting internet stuff, I started this thing called Bootstrap Live. If you Google Sam Parr Bootstrap Live, I wrote this up blog post like years and years ago about it, and I think it made $2,000, and that was like my first event. And then I started this conference called HustleCon, and in 60 days, it made 40 or 50 grand. And the way that I made each of those things popular was I would write a blog post about each speaker, and some of them went viral. And then what I would do is I would write an article each week, And then I would put the article as a blog post on the blog. I would share it wherever I thought people were. Some people would come to my website. I always had a pop-up on the website that was very attention grabbing. Some of them would sign up, and then they would get all the other emails or blog posts or articles that I previously wrote in like a drip sequence. And that worked wonderfully.
Would you recommend doing the infographics and blog posts about each speaker to get traffic, or how would you get traffic today to sell tickets?
It depends who you're going after, but like I said, I would go to wherever they live and wherever they are to siphon them off of that platform. For my audience, yeah, I think that same thing would work. Yeah, I think that a lot of people say, if you could start over, what would you do? And I think if you go and Google my name and read my old blog posts that I've written, I think most all of it would still work. I think it would still work. You don't need that many people on an email list to crush it. So if you're able to get 5,000 people, it would work. What I also did was I created meetup.com meetups, which I actually don't know if that is a thing anymore. And they used to give you I would create a meetup that was free and I would get 50 people to come because the website had traffic already. And they used to give me the emails of the people who clicked RSVP. And so very slowly I would build these email lists with 50 to 100 people at a time. But yeah, I think that it would still work where you show off the speakers and tell really cool stories about them. Yes, I think that would still work.
Sweet.
These are boring answers because I'm just saying yes.
No worries. What channels would you repost the blogs on?
I used Reddit and Hacker News. Those were my main things. And the way that I would use Reddit is I would have one username just for posting, and I would basically use that username all week, commenting and upvoting other people's stuff, being a good community member. And then I would post other people's stuff that I just thought was cool. And then 1 out of the 10 things I would post would be self-promotion.
Sweet. I think that's all I got.
Thanks, dude. Sorry if these are boring answers.
No, you're good. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Bao, I think that you're next.
Hey, Sam, Andrew, and Monica. My question also related to growth. Sam, you mentioned on Twitter like a few months ago that you created like a document for internal use at your business for important learnings for growing things. Don't think you have shared it on Twitter yet, but can you share some like key lessons?
Which
here?
document are you talking about? We talked about this thing that we used internally for trends. Which document? Tell me a little bit more.
You tweeted there are a few things first-time founders get wrong with growth. For example, first-time founders often do tons of different marketing initiations. And then you go on and you say, I'm putting together a document with some of my most important learnings from growing stuff. I'm going to read Alex Hormozi's lead book to brush up on growth stuff.
Got it. Yeah.
And you said you were shared the document, but I don't think it was.
Yeah, I never shared it. Yeah. So like internally, we have a set of rules. So like Andrew, tell me if you agree with this. My opinion towards growing something is typically what people tend to do, and I think this is wrong, is they do 5 or 10 different things. So they buy ads on like 5 different platforms, and they want to have a viral loop, and then they want to do a giveaway, and they want to do all these things. I have found typically what works best is you try 2 or 3 things, you find the one thing that works, and then you don't do anything else. And then you do only that until you get to some type of like interesting scale. That thing tends to break, and then you find another one. But in the majority of cases, I think one thing brings most all of the treasure, and people don't tend to just double down or triple down on that one thing. And I think that's what you should do. And then once you get a little bit bigger and you need some like downside protection, which is good, then you do that. But typically when you grow 0 to 1, it's usually one thing that works well, and you should just only do that, I think. Do you agree, Andrew?
100%. I've seen this over and over again. It's like a weird phenomenon where every single one of our businesses has one way of growing, and it rarely works across different platforms. Like MetaLab, for example, we saw that the best way to get work was do great work and post blogs. We tried doing Facebook, we tried doing referral marketing, we tried doing all sorts of different things. Nothing else worked. And I feel like to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Find your hammer.
Yeah, and it's usually one thing that works well. For us, for the first 100,000 users, it was blogging. For the next 500,000 people, it was like a referral campaign that we invented. And then like from 200,000 or 300,000 to 1 million or wherever it is now, it was Facebook paid marketing, because we were able to acquire a customer for $2 and I made $18 off of them. And when you can figure out how to turn $1 into more than $1, there's basically only one thing that you should do, which is you fill up a dump truck full of money and you dump that money into your machine that turns $1 into more dollars. And it's a very scary thing to do, but I think it's the right thing.
Yeah. So ideally organic channels before paid.
I think, yeah. I think if you 9 out of 10 times, I don't like making rules, but generally, if you have to grow at first via paid marketing, maybe your shit's not good. Not
Well,
always. Not
yeah,
always.
I think
but
there are
maybe.
lots of people. I see lots of raised hands. So let's keep one question per person and keep it short if we can, so we can accommodate everybody. Jeff, I think you're next.
This is Jeff. Yeah. Hi. How are you doing? Thanks, Andrew and Sam, for coming to the MFM event in Vancouver. I think it was about a year ago. It was awesome.
That was awesome.
I just wanted to quick note to Andrew. My sister just released her book on Penguin about hand-drawn Victoria. Maybe I'll contact Monica where we can send it to, but we'd love to send you and Chris a signed copy.
That's so cool. Right on. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, and then just a question for Andrew. What was your kind of minimal viable knowledge? Like, you went from a web designer to running these series of businesses, and then you're in a room with all these people talking about making acquisitions. Like, did you outsource or lean on a mentor, or like how did you get that kind of that knowledge that would put you in the room with those people?
That's a
So
great question.
I've never found that mentorship has worked. The way I think about mentorship is really being in the room that you don't deserve to be in. So being surrounded by people that intimidate you, that have figured out the next level of growth, and then just copying what they do. But I've never walked up to someone and been like, "Hey, will you mentor me?" I think that's really weird and doesn't really work, because usually if someone gives you advice, like, I would say almost all my worst decisions in business have actually been listening to advice from somebody who doesn't have a vested interest in me. They don't understand my context. They're operating on 20-year-old information, and they're just telling you what worked for them. And no, I never did mentorship. I basically just focused on maniacally getting better at one thing at a time. And when I first started my business, it was like, how do I read every possible business book, find out what's possible, and then zero in where I'm weak? So, for example, a key book in the beginning would be like The E-Myth by Michael Gerber about systems and delegation, or GTD, Getting Things Done by David Allen on productivity. And then 10 years on, it might be The Snowball, biography about Warren Buffett, and trying to reverse engineer what he did to make a lot of money and operate his business. But ultimately, actually, I'd say the two qualities I see in successful entrepreneurs, and I see a lot of unsuccessful entrepreneurs and people that get stuck, the ones that do well have insanely high pace. So if, let's say, Sam and I were talking and we came up with a business idea, we're the kind of people where we would start that idea that day. We would design a logo, we'd make a move forward. So people that move forward do well. And then also people who read all the time. Those are the two things I think that really matter.
Thank you. Diego, are you ready?
Okay, awesome.
Or
Thanks.
I've got
Sam,
the,
if you have
um,
I still
something.
got sent as the
I've got a homemade tattoo on my feet that I did when I was younger. I don't feel like showing it because it's disgusting, but I did it with a sewing needle, and it says "Act now," because I was like infatuated with moving forward quickly.
So deep. At least it's not like a tramp stamp of some sort of Asian character or something that means white devil.
It's still a tramp stamp. It just happens to say "Act now," but it's a very funky tattoo.
Nice.
It's got
Anyone
some
else?
motivation to it. Yeah, that's great. Thanks a lot.
Trevor.
Hey guys, I'm a commercial real estate broker in Vancouver, and I'm a big fan of you both. So thanks so much
Trevor,
for doing
you look
this.
great.
Trevor, is that a real
appreciate
background
it.
or a VR background?
It's a VR background on the Logitech new 4K web.
I was going,
Awesome.
why is this guy sitting in the hallway of his office? It's so weird.
Yeah, VR. I've tweaked my question a bit because some of it's been touched on, but I'm wondering if you can answer this from the perspective of how you might have dealt with this earlier in your career. In my position, where you don't have kids or a wife, you don't yet have financial freedom, you're just focused on building and servicing existing clients. So going back to the flow states you've talked about, I'm hoping you could just expand on that a bit further. So what are some of your prerequisites for a flow state, and more so for peak productivity over an extended period of time? And do you set goals or standards around personal productivity and output? And how are you balancing that against basic needs for life, fitness, and sleep?
Go ahead,
For
Andrew.
me, yeah, for me, it's a very precious thing and it's fleeting and difficult to get. But I find that because I'm no longer a night owl, the only time of my day where I feel sharp and can work is between about 10 in the morning or 9 in the morning until 12. And so I look at that window as that's my most cherished time. And whatever I spend that time on will be when I feel my best. And after that's exhausted, I just know I don't have more gas in the tank. So generally, what I focus on to achieve a flow state is great sleep, not spiking my blood sugar. Weirdly, I wear a continuous glucose monitor and just for health. And I actually find that when I spike my blood sugar, I lose my flow state really badly and can't focus and feel tired. And then a singular task. So I need to know that I'm not getting notifications. I just have one thing to focus on. And as soon as I browse to Superhuman and start checking my email and see some rabbit trail, I'm fucked. So I try really hard to lock down my devices and stay focused.
Early in my career, if you Google Sam Parr fat, I just Googled it. You'll see a bunch of fat pictures of me. I was not in shape at all. I ate horribly. I would eat candy, Kit Kat, Butterfinger all day. And I didn't really have one thing. I didn't have a productivity system. It was, and I don't know. I think it's a little overhyped. You don't have, if you want one, cool, if it works, but I didn't have anything special. It was just try to be at the office at 8:30, stay until everyone else left. And then once or twice a week, I would do like a late night where I try to be super productive, but I didn't have like a system really. I use pen and paper. I still use pen and paper. That's all I use.
I actually still use GTD, which I mentioned, getting things done. I use OmniFocus, and that's the only productivity system I've ever found is helpful. And I find that it's really easy to, in productivity, just do whatever the most urgent fire is, whatever's in front of you. And I find GTD allows you to see the full 50,000 or 50,000 foot perspective on all the projects you have going on. So I actually found that in my early life really effective.
My friend Andrew bought this software company, and I was a small owner of it called Toodle-Doo. It was a pretty bad business, but we bought it, and we got all of our users from that book getting things done because he mentioned it.
Nice. Yeah, that's a terrible name. I think I told you this a couple times. So I've lost so much money in to-do list software. Hard
It was
industry.
it was a bad business.
Okay, who's next?
My three, I think that's
Yeah, that's me. Hi, Andrew. Hi, Sam. It's wonderful to meet you guys after MFM Austin. Got a chance to pitch to you guys that time. It's wonderful to chat with you again. And Andrew, lovely podcast. The book is coming out, but the podcast is also amazing. My question is to Sam, when you were building out Hampton, I know you're still in the process.
Still building out Hampton.
Yes.
Come on.
Yes. Why did you choose to keep it a secret for a while? And my question is coming from like this, you have the social capital and you could have built it in public, but what was your reasoning behind it?
Yeah, so me and my partner Joe, without a website, we got $1 million in the bank in about 5 months, all through word of mouth for Hampton. I would DM people or cold outreach people, and I would just send them a Google Doc. And then if they were interested, I would interview them to see if they were a good fit. And then we sent up a Stripe link and they would pay. And we did not have a website until I started working on it July. We had a website in December, and then we launched publicly in March. I didn't want to tell anyone about it for a few reasons. The one big reason was I felt a little bit of imposter syndrome, and I wanted to prove that to myself that I could build a business without using my audience, because I didn't have a business when I started my first company, or I didn't have an audience when I started my first company, and I wanted to prove myself that I have what it takes. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to hone in on the product before once I got an audience, I realized that I could share something and get lots of users, and I wanted to make sure that the product was really good before I did that. But it was definitely ego driven, just to make, and also practicality. I just wanted to make sure it was good. I didn't want to talk about it. Communities are a special thing. If it gets big fast, you can really fuck it up. And I just wanted to make sure that it was going to work before I put my reputation on it. I was really scared about that.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Max.
Hey guys, thanks for doing this, Monica. I appreciate it. Andrew, this one's for you. I'm curious, and I'm not sure if I've heard you talk about it. I appreciate all the interviews you've done. Can you talk a little bit about the process of what it was like to raise a fund, and particularly with, I think, your guys' model of long-term ownership? It feels contrary in my mind to the 2 and 20 model, and be curious to understand what that experience was like, and in hindsight, anything you might have learned from that.
Yeah, one of the most interesting things about it was my biggest fear. So I had bootstrapped my entire business. I had never owed anyone anything, and I'd never had any substantial partners. I'd had a few small spin out businesses that had gone on to raise venture capital and other stuff, but I hadn't actually ever been in a position where I had a partner or an investor. And so when I did it, I wanted to ensure that nobody could ever call me and be upset. And what I mean by that is, let's say it didn't go well. I wanted to be able to say, look, you lost, let's say $1 million. I lost five, because I wanted to ensure I was the largest investor in it. And I also wanted to ensure that it was very fair and aligned. And most funds charge 2% management fee and 20% of the profits, no matter what. I did no management fee, so we don't get paid unless it outperforms. And we got 30%, but only above an 8% hurdle, meaning if after it makes 8%, then we take 30% of the remainder. And I thought that would be awesome, but I noticed that it's still it was confusing to people. And they were like, we want you to look like a duck and quack like a duck. And why are you not charging fees? And this is weird. I still get just as many calls. People get just as annoyed. And even though we were super clear about, look, we're only going to send once a year update, all these things, we still are constantly fielding questions and all that stuff. In retrospect, I actually regret doing it at all, because I didn't really need to. Frankly, I think there was a bit of ego tied up in it, of wanting to be able to do bigger deals and see if we could raise money and that kind of stuff. And for me personally, I think I do best when I know that I'm in charge and I'm the boss and it's my money. And if I don't want to do something, I just don't do it, and I don't have to communicate that to anyone. So
How
I'd say
big
my
was the
greatest
fund, Andrew?
200 million.
Golly.
And are you holding those companies, Andrew, like for the long term, or
Yeah,
are you
yeah.
expecting to sell those?
We bought incredible businesses, and we love the fund. It's awesome. But in terms of, I just interviewed Jason Fried on my podcast last week, and I was texting with Sam. I think Jason is like the man. He's still my North Star, because he doesn't know anything to anyone, and he doesn't do anything he doesn't want to do. So he told a story on my podcast of how Joe Gebbia from Airbnb came to him and was like, "Hey man, I'm a huge fan. I want you to invest in Airbnb. Like, I'll give you free equity basically at like $3 million valuation." And Jason just didn't do it because he didn't fill out the form. He just said, "I don't like doing paperwork. I don't do paperwork." And that's Jason, right? He still got rich. He's great. He doesn't need the money. He doesn't regret it, but he literally is just so strict. He doesn't do anything he doesn't want to do. Whereas I think I do a lot of things I don't want to do. I spend a lot of time on shoulds.
Got it. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Monica, for doing this.
Awesome. Steven.
Hey guys, how do you both think about raising well-adjusted kids with meaningful levels of net worth?
Sam, you want to take this one first?
I don't have a good answer yet. My kid is only 7 months now. I don't have a good answer. I'm really nervous about it. One of the reasons I started this other podcast, MoneyWise, was we did it to grow Hampton, but we also did it because I wanted that same answer. My current opinion is that I will discuss money with her early on. I think I'll explain to her that I believe I got to where I am. 51% of it was luck. I'll probably tell to her it was all through hard work. I don't believe that to be true, but I'm going to probably tell her it was all hard work to set a good example, even though I think it was mostly luck. I'm probably not going to give her anything. As of now, I'm thinking we won't give our children anything other than medical and education for life, because I feel uncomfortable being like, I don't want to give them stuff because they didn't sign up for something. And if it is a burden to them, I would feel bad. But I don't have a great answer for this. But other than I intend to talk to them about it a whole lot from an early age.
I think about this a lot, and I know people who grew up in wealthy families who are miserable and nasty and spoiled. And then I know people who grew up in wealthy families who are lovely and down to earth and kind. And I think what I want to focus on and what I have been focusing on with my kids is treating people with respect, being polite, being humble. And I think if those things are true, then a lot of things can go wrong and they can still be okay. And Sam, I'm not going to give my kids much money at all. I think I'm going to give them probably enough that they have almost like social security. Like they always know that worst case scenario, they would have food and shelter and education, but that's it.
Awesome. Soren, I think you're next.
Thank you. Hey guys, hey Andrew, hey Sam. Huge fan of both y'all's. Super excited to read Never Enough. I'm currently in a limbo career-wise, so I don't really have a pertinent business question. But for you, Andrew, I know you mentioned in a podcast I was listening to a couple days ago that you were dealing with some chronic acid reflux issues and were concerned about potential issues down the line. And I was having some similar issues about a year ago and I was able to fix it, but the solution was counterintuitive. I ended up having to increase my gastric acid, not make it less. So I was curious if you were able to fix that or
I don't know which podcast you listened to, but I had that
What
problem for about
podcast are you
10
talking
years.
about your acid reflux issues?
Yeah, where was I talking about that?
I
I also have
I've
this
been on a
sore on
binge.
my thigh. Yeah.
Yeah. You got a good rash you could show off?
Yeah. Yeah, what podcast was it?
I couldn't tell you because I've listened maybe to 20 episodes of going on pretty much
It was
everything
the Knowledge
recently.
Project.
Oh yeah, okay.
Possibly, yeah.
Oh, you got a bunch of acid reflux guys here, Andrew.
I have a really it's a
Yeah.
weird thing, but I finally realized that I couldn't burp. Imagine not being able to burp your entire life. Imagine not being able to fart your entire life, right? Just pressure builds up and nothing happens. And the same thing was
Right.
actually happening for me. I couldn't burp. And so I would get pressure and then it would turn into acid reflux. And so I found this doctor in Chicago and they inject endoscopic Botox into your throat. And now I can burp and I have way less acid reflux and it's not really a problem anymore. So I've been very fortunate.
That's awesome. Yeah, figured in case you hadn't already fixed it. Yeah, to me it was pretty weird
I
solution when I finally
appreciate
found
that.
it. So
It's hell. And one of the
yeah.
worst things is it's one thing when you have like a bum leg and you're like limping and like people feel sympathy for you when you're like an asshole or you're complaining about it. But when it's invisible and inside of you, no one sees, nobody cares, and they just think you're being irritable for no reason. So yeah, I definitely feel you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, guys. Super excited for the book.
I've read the book. It's awesome, by the way.
Thanks, dude.
Awesome. Jason.
Thank you. Thank you guys for being here. Sam, hope your running training's going well. My question is for Andrew. So I'm I guess a recovering venture-backed startup founder, barely got out. And then now I'm all in on boring businesses. And I started one 8 years ago and we hired a CEO in 2020. But I think we messed up on the incentive comp. And I was reading your annual letter recently, and you talked about how you had tried out giving stock options to your CEOs, and now you're reverting back to maybe making it based on a return on invested capital. We're actually going through a very similar thing right now in our business. We gave out the stock options, don't really feel like incentive or we're aligned with our CEO. So I was just curious if you could speak to that, and maybe even if you could share an example of how a comp structure that you're moving forward with CEOs in your holding co.
Yes, I'll give one example from about 4 or 5 years ago. We had a CEO who he was from Silicon Valley and he said, it's really important that I have ownership and I want stock options. And so we said, okay, we're going to give you 10% of the company in stock options. And the way it ended up working was the company was very successful and grew very quickly. And it started building up tons of cash. And we kept saying, hey, issue a dividend, send us the extra money, because at Tiny, we're the bank. So we basically say, look, send us excess capital. When you need extra for R&D, we'll send it back. And he just kept saying, no, I've got all these big projects, and the projects would never materialize. And when I thought about the incentive, I realized that when money leaves the company as a stock option holder, he benefits in absolutely no way whatsoever. And so the way we changed his comp is we simply added a clause that said, until you exercise your options, you get 10% of any dividends that are issued as a bonus. And that solved the problem immediately. So you could try something like that. And I think dividends are one of those things that if someone's never experienced them, they don't get it and they don't think about it and they don't really think about profit. As soon as they start participating in monthly dividends, I promise you, your CEO will be very focused on the bottom line.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you.
Sam, you might have some insights here because you've been going through this with the CEO. I don't know if you have anything to share, learnings there.
I copied you. I did that exact same thing.
Sweet.
Basically, I was struggling with it too. And then we changed it to monthly dividends paid out quarterly. Monthly dividends paid out quarterly, which I guess you could say quarterly dividends.
Quarterly dividends.
Yeah, but it's like a monthly thing that we would send an email. Here's how much to expect. But yeah, I did the exact same thing that you said.
Amazing. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You bet.
Soren, I think I skipped you before. I don't know if you are still there.
No, sorry, I already asked the guest.
Oh, okay.
Weird question. I appreciate
Marco.
it.
Marco.
Hey guys, thanks for doing this. Andrew, big news out of Tiny. Congrats on hiring Jordan as the CEO. Maybe just speak to what that does to your day to day and why he's the right guy for the job. Brag about him a bit.
Sure. So, yeah, I think when Tiny was 5 companies, it was really simple. We would hire 5 CEOs and then we would delegate the operations to them. And we'd get 5 reports every month and we would talk to the CEOs a couple times a year. And it was really easy to oversee. But then we went public and we also got up to 40 companies. And very quickly, our entire day got eaten by talking to CEOs, because when you have 40, you've always got to fire one, change another comp, hire another. There's always something going on in that day-to-day operations side. And then on top of that, being in a public company, you're also dealing with investors and the bank and all these other people. And no matter what we did, we would always say, hey, go talk to our CFO or talk to this person. They're very senior. And the bank or whoever it is, they always want to talk to the CEO. And so what was happening is Chris and I were getting pulled away from the area that we think is our zone of genius, which is really driving demand and promoting the business, talking about what we do, and then building relationships with founders and doing deals. That's what we love. And so over time, we just found that we weren't able to do that. And it became very obvious that Jordan was just so much better. He's very good at M&A and capital allocation, but he also is really good at operations. He's the kind of guy who calls his CEOs daily. He's always on the phone. That's how he likes to operate. That's not how I like to operate. And that's what the job ultimately requires. And so it was just very logical. And I don't expect that my workday actually changes that much other than what I'm doing. I think the time I'm spending on Tiny is equal. It's just I'm actually doing things that I love versus things that I'm good at but don't enjoy, or things that I'm not good at and don't enjoy, right? Which is the worst possible thing. So yeah, it feels really good. Thank you.
Yeah, congrats. Quick question for Sam. How is the running going? You're doing a 50-mile, I guess.
It sucks. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it through. The injury is killing me. My calf is killing me. It sucks, man. Every Sunday I got to run for 3 hours.
Oh my God.
I'm doing one as well, July. Can attest to that.
It's horrible.
Thank you, Michael.
I don't know if I'll make it.
Marco, do you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah. Hi there. Hey, Andrew, this is for you. I've been harassing you about it, and I think you just mentioned, I know you're a big fan of Warren Buffett, and I was surprised not to see a Warren Buffett book on your list of recommended books. And I think you just mentioned it earlier, Snowball. So if that's the answer of your favorite Warren Buffett book, I'll take that. If not, let me know. And another question I wanted to ask you, you mentioned you were going to release a checklist for hiring a CEO. I'm thinking about doing that at the end of the year, which is a scary thing. So I wanted to ask you, how long do you take? What's the process looks like on hiring that CEO? Is a 3-month thing, a 6-month thing? I'm trying to get
Did you
better
listen to
at,
my
doing
first million? Did you listen to my first
Yeah.
million episode? Yeah, that would be a great place to start. You can also get the checklist on my website, Monica, or email Monica. She can send it to you. In terms of Warren Buffett,
If you just Google Andrew, I just did it now. Andrew Wilkinson hiring a CEO checklist. You'll see it come up.
yeah. In terms of Warren Buffett, that's interesting. The order I read them in was the Snowball, which is much more of an emotional, who is this guy? How does his brain work? What's his family like book? And then I read Warren Buffett, The Making of an American Capitalist. I think that's the best biography. And it's much more tactical. It breaks down what he does, but it doesn't tell you how to be a value investor. If you want to be a value investor, the best book is The Dando Investor by Monish Pabrai, who Sean actually did an incredible 2 hour interview with that is just packed full of awesome quotes on MFM. But yeah, The Dando Investor is the best book on value investing.
Does that book, does that apply for private company?
Yeah, totally. Everything we do, I learned from that book.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, dude.
Andy, you're next. We're going to keep the questions short. There's still lots of people. So thank you, guys.
Hey, hello from across the pond. My question basically, so I'm in the military. I've got 2 years left, well, just over 2 years left. What is probably the number one thing I should be looking to work upon to transition into civilian life and to effectively, well, start making a proper career out there?
Sam?
Boy, I don't know, man. That's too great of a question. I don't want to, I feel scared. Can you, really quick, what interests you?
So aeronautical engineer, primarily of my career, I've been working small teams, small teams, small sections. You go out, you've got 10, 20 people, you've got an aircraft and ops.
Do you want to run a business? Do you care about getting rich, or do you want to be an individual teammate?
Probably not running, but I quite like the operational aspects. So it'll be a small company, I'll be thinking.
I think
Would you buy a business or work in?
Work in probably just now.
I've got friends who are SEALs, and they have organizations to help people get gigs afterwards. And I go to those meetings and I hang out with them and slightly advise, although that's probably even over glorifying it. Just hang out with them at dinner and just talk. I would say, though, cold email people. My life has been changed with the cold email. I cold emailed lots of people, and I think that you have an advantage in that you have a pretty cool background, and that lots of powerful people would be more than willing to give you the time of day, even just 30 minutes, because if you just are willing to brag a little bit about what you do, that's pretty impressive, and people would feel honored to talk to you. So if I was you, I would spend the next 6 months cold emailing people like crazy, and you say, I'm in the military. This is what we do. Can I just have 20 minutes of your time? Best case scenario, maybe one day we're going to work together. Worst case scenario, you now have you could say something funny. You now have a tough friend in the military or something cool, and I'll repay in any way I can. And I bet you if you send that to 100 people, you'll get 20 meetings.
Oh, perfect.
That's great advice. One other note there is, if you're going to work for somebody else, I would examine I would look up on Glassdoor or through just asking around, what are the companies with the best reputation and the best culture? And then also, are there niches within your world that pay better than others? Is there a certain type of engineer that's incredibly rare and you could train to be that, or you do have that skill set? And I try and find that niche, because there could be one role that would pay $250,000 a year, another would be 125, and maybe it just requires a little bit of positioning or something of your resume. So I would do some thinking around that.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Nick?
Hey guys, this is Nick from Italy. Happy to join this MAA as well as the last one. Question to both of you. So Sam said that back a few years ago, newsletter was easier than now, less competition. I was wondering if there is something similar to that today, meaning what are the channels that are not yet as crowded as all the other, as newsletter or podcast and so on.
That's tough, because I stay in my lane and I only know what I know, and I don't look at the landscape to try to find the answer. Look, I think that people want to start newsletters because they saw the success that me and a handful of other companies had and what other people have. If you're good at writing and you are willing to write a newsletter every day, or however the cadence is, for the next 5 years, you should start a newsletter. If you are good at appearing in front of the camera, you should go on TikTok or Instagram. I'm bad at that. If you are good at writing, I would go newsletter, then I would go LinkedIn, then I would go Twitter. But only do any of those things if you're good at writing. It really depends on what you're willing to do for 5 years. I've been blogging since 2010, and I still write all the time. So if you're good at writing, Newsletter's the way to go still. Don't start a
Thanks.
podcast. Don't start a podcast unless you have an audience somewhere else. That's basically a good general rule. It's like podcasts are like impossible to grow unless you already have an audience elsewhere.
Yeah, one note is I built up a pretty reasonable Twitter following, but I can put out a tweet and one tweet will be seen by 1,000 people and another one will be seen by 30 million, and it's up to the algorithm. And so ultimately, part of the reason why I started the newsletter is because you have a one-to-one relationship. If you send the email, it's probably going to hit their inbox. And I think that
And
the
50% of them
risk,
will read it.
yeah, and the risk of any other platform is you can, with one swipe, if you're a blog, Google changes the algo, or YouTube, same deal.
Yeah,
So I would just try and find a platform where you get a one-to-one relationship.
Thanks. By the way, if I can add something, just no, sorry, too many questions.
Okay.
Next time.
Thank you. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you. Thanks, dude.
Nathan.
Hey guys, my name is Nathan Sedembrini. Really appreciate you guys doing this. Huge fan of both of you guys. I've actually listened to every single MFM podcast.
Dude, thank you. We've made
Every
like
single one. Wow.
We made
Oh my
like
God.
$5 off your attention. Thank you.
And I've listened to every Andrew Wilkinson podcast on MFM.
I think Andrew owes me equity in Tiny for somehow making him just a little bit more popular.
See, that'd be so much more flattering if you'd said, Andrew, I've listened to every single MFM you've been on. Instead, you said, I've listened to every single MFM, which I'm part of. So
I like you,
Yeah.
Andrew,
Thank you.
but I like a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andrew, I went back and listened to both of yours, or all of yours, twice, because recently launched a agency business and I was trying to get some tips. But yeah, so my question was going to be about how to get clients for the agency business, but you already answered that. My side hustle, as part of being a kind of a new entrepreneur, very interested in potentially joining Hampton someday. There's a lot of other people just like me and who are building six-figure businesses and want them to become seven-figure businesses. And so I think there's an opportunity for kind of a feeder for Hampton, which I know you've mentioned a couple times on the pod, but basically for six-figure business owners who want to get to over 1 million.
So you wondering where you should go, or just suggesting that idea?
No, I'm actually actively, so I lead the, or co-lead the Denver MFM meetup.
Thank you.
And we actually have some people from the meetup here on the call today, but some of us have talked about forming the pilot group. It's called Haven. And so I'm actually
Lawsuit.
curious if you were launching, going down market a bit, kind of 6 to 7 figure peer network, how would you go about doing it?
So I actually did this really informally. So I was part of EO for many years,
Cool.
and I ended up just spinning out and doing my own what are called forums. Are you guys doing forums?
Core group. We call it
I
core
think
group.
you guys call it core groups. EO
Same
calls
thing.
it forum. YPO, same thing. But yeah, 5 or 6 people in a room. I would just start doing that. I'd start building groups. The hard part is if they're meeting in person, I don't know if you can really charge for it unless you're providing the room or the structure or events or something around it. But yeah, I would literally start breaking the groups into 5 or 6 people, meeting once a month, learn all about EO for format, and just copy that.
I think you should charge for it. I think you can charge for it. Matter of
Yeah.
fact, there's a guy on this call named Tops, Tops. Tops worked with me and Joe very early on in starting Hampton. I think he wants to work on an idea like this, or maybe he's doing Hampton, but in like Asia. I don't remember exactly. But anyway, DM him and just copy exactly what we did.
Nice. Yeah, so I guess one level
You
deeper.
know what? I think we're gonna is if it's okay to move.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, dude.
Cool.
Mohammed.
Message
Make
Tops.
it quick. Make it quick.
I was
Okay,
just gonna,
Mohammed.
Yeah, thanks, Monica. Andrew, obviously you've now gone public and probably face a different set of challenges. And I'm curious if, what do you view as the biggest sort of constraint now to go from what your market cap is now to 10 billion? If I were to say that would maybe be the next quantum. Just curious to get a view into your mind and see what constraints you're facing. And is it deal flow problem or talent acquisition? Just curious.
I think the hardest part of my job is CEO selection. So finding exceptional CEOs and finding a lot of them. We're somewhat capital constrained. All we have is our ability to raise equity if we choose to do that, which I'm not a big fan of going out and constantly raising equity and trying to arb the stock or something like that. or just going off cash flow. So that's really the limiting factor of our business is how much cash flow are we bringing in and how many businesses can we buy and what scale are they? And then how many great CEOs can we find to operate those? And that's really all it comes down to. And frankly, like I'm not somebody who has a formula. I'm not somebody who 10 years ago said Tiny will be a $500 million market cap public company. I'm somebody who looks at my feet and starts walking down the path. And then every once in a while, I look up and I'm amazed by where we've ended up. But ultimately, I think if we just keep focusing on buying exceptional companies that have staying power, and that's the hard part about my job is finding the businesses that actually have a moat and staying power, which has changed a lot over the last 2 years. If you had told me that Google's monopoly was at risk 2 years ago, I'd say you're dreaming. And now I actually really worry about the future of Google. So things are crazy right now. And I'd say that's the hardest piece of what we do.
Thanks.
Hagen.
Hey, Andrew, good to see you again. Really excited for the
Oh, hey,
book.
dude.
Hey, Sam, huge fan of the pod. I've listened to every episode ever since Andrew started coming on. Question mainly for Andrew, but maybe both of you. I was just wondering, related to the last question, with all the advancements in AI and the LLMs, I was just wondering what your prediction is for the next stage of the internet. What's going to change the most, and what do you see staying the same?
Sam, I'll let you take that one.
And the question is, what do we see staying the same and going away?
Like the biggest impacts, like what Andrew was just saying about Google. To me, I see this as a very pivotal point with the way that people are interacting with the internet. But at the same time, I think Andrew had talked about how in some ways AI might be a bit overhyped, but I think potentially there is a big change in how people are interacting with the internet. So I was just wondering, what do you think is going to be the biggest change and what do you think will actually stay the same?
Dude, I don't know why you said that, Andrew, or made me answer this. I'm so uneducated on this topic. I'm more on the sidelines where I'm like, so here's how I truly think. I think that between now and whenever it really kicks in, if that's 5 years or 10 years, who knows? What I'm trying to do is just stack away as much money as possible because I think when it really kicks in, the haves versus the have-nots, that gap is going to go like crazy, and I'm actually really afraid. Um, I think that like community is going to stay the same, like people wanting to talk to other people. Besides that, I think nothing else is safe. I think that like, the whole like, oh, you got a cool brand and a creator, I think that's nonsense. I think that AI creators or bands and movies and all that shit are going to be better and people are going to love them just as much. And then I think that like in person, so like at Hampton, we're not quite pivoting, but we're like opening up like so right now our core groups meet monthly via Zoom. We're changing it so they can meet in person. And I think like anything that involves like in-person stuff is going to thrive. That's what I'm noticing is that people want in-person interaction because they're sick of working from home. But I'm a bad person to answer that question. I don't pay attention too much to it other than I'm scared.
Yeah, we're focusing. So if you think about buying an enterprise SaaS software company or something right now versus owning a company like AeroPress, I feel much more comfortable predicting that people will still be drinking coffee in their kitchen in 20 or 30 years than using certain pieces of software. I think the biggest disruption that's coming is digital people. I don't think that people really understand this idea that ultimately all entertainment will be live generated and that you will literally be able to have a therapist who is better than any therapist you could ever have.
Yeah.
They will know exactly how to calibrate to you and they will be as beautiful or frumpy as is optimal for you. And we all could exist in a world where we have digital friends, we have digital girlfriends, we have therapists, all these things. And I think that's both wonderful and terrifying because, on one hand, there's a lot of really lonely, sad people out there who need friends and can't find friends, and there's an epidemic of that. On the flip side, I think it could be like the movie Wall-E, where everybody's just in their little entertainment chamber alone. But it's interesting to ask the question, is that okay? If everybody's happy and engaged in talking, even if it's to AI, is that okay? I don't know. I think about this a lot. I'm personally really excited But like Sam, I do think this can create a winner takes all scenario in a variety of markets. And I think that the stuff I'm actually looking at, the stuff I'm most excited about in terms of businesses we're looking to acquire are often experiential or physical in-person stuff, because software, unless it's incredibly niche, I think is potentially disruptible.
That's
Thanks.
great. Thank you.
We have maybe time for one more question.
Sam, how much time do you have?
I
You
got about
another.
I got about another minute or two, but if people tweet at
Perfect.
me, I'll reply. I got to go to a concert tonight, my friends. I got to go see the
Who you
band
seeing?
Bleachers.
Awesome.
Bleachers.
I
Nice.
have a question, Sam. I think your latest, I don't know, experiment, Sam's list, is like so brilliant. I don't know if you can talk about briefly how it came about, how you like spun that so quickly.
This is a great story. This is a great story. So listen up. I hate traveling. I don't do any drugs or alcohol except when I fly. I hate flying. I take Xanax when I fly. I was at the airport and I was high on Xanax. And when I say high on Xanax, I take a very mild dose. So it's like nothing. And I was angry that my accountant emailed me something and I was upset that I was finding out at that moment versus months prior. I tweeted out, who's got a good accountant? I got 300 people to reply with their accountant, but the tweet you can look up the tweet. I don't remember how many bookmarks it got. I think like 1,000+ bookmarks. And I was like, oh, people are going to refer back to this list a bunch. And then I called my buddy Joe. I go, Joe, I got an idea. And what we did was we basically took all 300, or I forget how many replies, and I called all 300 of them. I didn't call all 300 of them. I called 50 of them, and then I hired someone to help me call the rest. And we asked them how much do they charge, who's the perfect client, who's not the perfect client, what services they offer, whatever, anything that you would ask when seeking out an accountant. And we were like, let's make this into a list where you could refer to for all accountants, because it was like literally impossible to find an accountant online. There was no like just curated list of like when you're in a neighborhood looking for a restaurant. And I was like, I just need a list. I don't even know like where do I find an accountant? And so I've always been fascinated with a marketplace business, because I think marketplaces, as Andrew can probably attest to with Dribbble, marketplace businesses or some of his other things, marketplace businesses have a massive moat. And I was like, I bet I can turn this into a marketplace. Let's see if we can do it. And so I spent $15,000 and I hired a developer from Bubble. And then I made the logo on ChatGPT. I told ChatGPT, make it look like Clippy meets Mickey Mouse, but with a calculator. And that was our logo. And me and Joe were like, let's just tell the designer of the website to make it look like Microsoft 97. And so we did. And then we shared it out. We got 10,000 people to come to the website in the first 7 days. Now we're getting 500-ish people. A lot of it's from Google to come to the website. Me and Joe funded the business with $30,000. We asked this young woman named Kimmy to run it. I'm not going to tell you how much we pay her because that's her thing. But we basically made 30 grand in May, and that was more than enough to pay for the bills, and we've almost made back our investment. I think that business can make.
How do you make money? What's the revenue model?
The way it makes money is on the website, there's 100 or 200 or 300 accountants, and then their customers or people who are friends with them or whatever, in order to get on the website, someone had to go and endorse them and recommend them and say why they like them. And you can go on our website and you could just browse all of them for free. And all those accountants, not one of them had paid to be there. You can't pay to be there. Or you could go through this quiz where we ask you, is this for business or is this for personal? If it's for business, how much revenue, what type of business, how much you want to pay, whatever. We'll recommend some of the accountants that fit your criteria. And then there's a button that you can click that says, would you like for us to connect you to some of our preferred vendors? And these are people who we built relationships with. And so if you click that button, we'll introduce you to a few of them and they pay us money for that introduction.
So it's like affiliate basically. Per lead,
No,
they pay you or
lead.
monthly? Smart.
Lead. But they pay us, yeah, they pay us per lead. They say, we're going to give you this much money for this many introductions.
So you're building like Capterra or Clutch, but for accounting. Smart.
Yeah, but eventually it could be for other services like business insurance. I don't know who. Just anytime I'm like, I can't. The thesis of the business is messy data. So anytime that I'm like, I can't figure out which of these services is best, that means that the information's out there, but it's really messy. I'm gonna create a vertical within Sam's list to make it easier, to make it easier to discover.
That's smart. Okay,
And
well,
by the
Sam,
way,
you got to roll.
it took 2 weeks to make that and get that live. So act
Yeah,
now,
this
and the
is
tattoo.
this
We
is
moved
exactly
fast.
it. Measure twice, cut once. Don't keep measuring. Don't overthink. And that's like a bubble site, you said, just like crappy, no fancy development.
I think it's great development, Andrew. But yeah, it's
Well,
bubble.
you know what I mean, right? It's like you're just using a
Yeah.
Webflow or Notion or whatever. Guys, thanks so much for coming. Those were great questions. And Sam, I appreciate you coming despite your tire issue and all the other stuff.
I'm so sorry I was late, and thanks everyone.
No, all good.
And hopefully I'm not ruining the party by leaving early. So just tweet at me and I'll reply.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, guys. See you later.
See you.